it's nice to get a pat on the back and a thank you sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, we made the mistake of taking off the uniform and thinking our service was done, right? And I think it was, I think it put us in a position far worse than the general public. The general public male, a lot of issues, right? 40% less testosterone than their counterpart 20 years ago. That's a fucked up thing.
40%?
40%, yeah.
Jesus
yes.
Christ.
So the average 21-year-old today has the same testosterone levels as like a 65-year-old did in 2000, give or take. For a variety of reasons, environmental stuff and whatever, but like microplastics and shit like that and heavy metals. But, you know, that kid who has been told to some degree, whether directly or indirectly, that masculinity is somehow intrinsically bad, or that the patriarchy is bad, or that, you know, the exercise of strength is intrinsically bad, right? Or whiteness is bad, or whatever these crazy things people say. You mix that with the hormonal issues, and you have a kid who has the biological imperative to provide and protect and to use aggression to do that, right? Because that's how we're designed. Now all that aggression is frowned upon publicly, so it's turned inward, and we know what that is. That's depression, right? Violence turned inward, or anger turned inward is depression. So we have this slew of depressed kids. Now you map that onto the to the veteran. It's somebody who has had the ultimate purpose very clearly defined, right? And something that is a part of their identity.
Yeah.
Then be taken away, right? It's different to never have experienced it, but it's one thing to have it be a critical part of your identity, and then have that plus your community taken away from you, right?
Yeah, plus the community. Yeah. Both of those are.
And our response to that was like, oh, it's going to be okay, buddy. Those words ring hollow. And that's why dudes, not 22 a day, but more like 40 a day, kill themselves, right?
Wow.
3 Rangers over the weekend actually killed themselves. It's like
3 Rangers.
Yeah. from third bat. Yeah. It's like, it seems so obvious that that's the wrong answer to me. These guys need a purpose, just like anybody else, right?
Right.
I mean, again, I hate to be reductive about it, but like an Australian Shepherd that isn't on the job, they are panicked and neurotic and don't know what to do with themselves.
Right.
Right. Now map that onto a highly intelligent dude who knows how to do things. And now he's like, all right, well, I'm fucking useless.
Yeah. And
then you tell him, oh, it's okay. It's okay to be useless. He knows that's not true.
Right.
Right. So what do you do when everything is fucked and everybody's lying to you, you know?
Right.
It's easy to spiral like that. I'll say that.
Yeah, no kidding. What do you think is like a better solution?
Well, one, identifying that problem first, because sunlight's the best disinfectant, right? Understanding the parameters, the left and right limits of life like that will start to change your decision making. I don't know if you saw it, but Shia LaBeouf was on Real Ones with John the other day.
I didn't see that.
And he was talking about how much better of a person and husband and father he is now, right? And here's what he said. Before, my life was about being happy. My goal in life was to be happy, right? And that means that every action I took was self-serving. It had no real purpose. I mean, except for just this generalized idea of happiness, which is, you know, that's how you become addicted to things.
Yeah.
You're chasing the dragon, as they call it, right? And he said at some point he realized that his function, his purpose needed to be useful, right? To be useful, to be present for his wife and his children, or child. I think he's only got one, and whomever else in his life, right? So, you know, usually particularly psychologically, defining the problem usually unveils what the answer to that problem is, right? So the problem is that I have no purpose, and I'm biologically wired to have purpose, and that's what it's going to fulfill me. Then I need to go find it in whatever way I can. And it's not going to be the same for everybody. I mean, some people find it through service, like the military or police or first responders or community service or whatever it is. Some people find it in business, creating jobs, mentoring people, stuff like that. Some people find it in their family. I mean, and then to some degree, all of those things, right? For some folks.
Sure.
But that's the goal, right? Is to refocus this person back onto purpose. Now it's more difficult these days because purpose requires some sort of desired end state, right? So it's like my purpose as a father is to make sure I have healthy, well-adjusted, protected kids who are now ready for the world or something like that, right?
Sure.
That's just one example. These days where all of I mean, beginning in adolescence, we don't have rites of passage anymore unless you're Jewish and you have a bar mitzvah. But for a young man, there are no more rites of passage anymore in society. So it starts off pretty early being a problem, but even into adulthood, and this is something that's probably true for women as well, but these time hacks through life where it's hard to know if you're doing good at life sometimes, right? But knowing that I've graduated or I've got the job that I want, I'm on the right track for my career, or I've started my family, or I've bought my first house, or whatever it is. These things are very off center these days. A lot of them are pushed to the right, year wise by quite a bit, like 10 years in a lot of cases.
Well, I was reading somewhere recently that the most common living arrangement for men under 35 currently is with their parents. The most common.
Yeah, that's not great.
And
there's a lot of societal factors for that,
seems
right?
backwards for sure.
I mean, inflation's rough, housing market's rough.
Yes.
There's a lot of societal factors for that, but I think
college degree,
and
debt that comes with that, the lack of jobs outside after you graduate that you thought you were going to get.
It's daunting, I'm sure. I was fortunate enough to have all my education paid for by the military, including my master's degree, so it was pretty nice. But yeah, it's like all of these things that used to be the infrastructure of American life or Western life in general are now kind of different, and we haven't adjusted to that yet.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't know if we're doing it on purpose, but it feels like we are, but we're delaying maturity a lot.
Yeah.
I think that people mature at the rate that they are required to mature.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
And I don't think you do them any favors by delaying that. I think that a man should be a man by 16, right? Like you should, if things go wrong and something happens with your family, you should not like you're going to go get a $100,000 a year job. It's not what I mean, but you should be of sound mind, making good decisions with your eye on the future, right? At 16, you can't be still fucking around on video games thinking that it's all going to be okay until you're 22, and then you'll figure out what you're going to do, right? Not like people say that's like, oh, don't put so much pressure on them. Why? Pressure makes diamonds, bitch.
Right.
Like, what are you talking about? What kind of soft ass society do you want to live in? That doesn't make any sense to me. People will mature as they are required to. Like I've seen half the sergeants in the Army are 22 years old, right? 22. They're out there and they've got 3 or 6 or sometimes 12 dudes following them into combat.
Yeah.
You're telling me that 22-year-old can't make the good decisions elsewhere? Of course they can.
Right. We
We just don't require them to. People will rise to the level of requirement. And that's part of it too. When you coddle people who are going through this psychological distress, they get comfortable in that period. And that is unacceptable. It can't happen like that. It should be uncomfortable to be in psychological distress. It should be uncomfortable to be in a job you don't like, or a relationship you don't like, or not in a relationship that you want to be in, or whatever, right? Like that discomfort is what's supposed to make you go do these things.
Correct.
And everybody's talking about, all the gurus are talking about, manufacturing discomfort for yourself. And it isn't rocket surgery, man. Just like do the thing, whatever it is. That's why I love Chris Williamson. He just always says that. Just do the thing. Whatever it is, just go do the thing.
Right.
Yeah,
thinking about doing the thing isn't doing the thing. Right. Planning to do the thing isn't doing the thing. Yeah.
Just go do it, man. I mean, in troop leading procedures, one of the things we use to build operations in the military, the first thing you do after you get a generalized plan is called start necessary movement, right? So I get a warning order And then I start my necessary movement. Like, hey, we got to go take this hill. We'll get you details on the way. All right, I'm just going to go start doing stuff. An implicit act, right? And something about that investment, I think, one, it's traction, right?
Yep.
I'm sure you know about that. Like getting that stone rolling at first is a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
But then, you can, some of these things that cause us problems sometimes, like spent cost fallacy, for example, you can leverage that too, right? Like invest yourself into something so you feel compelled to do it more.
Sure.
That's not a bad thing,
Right.
So you have to get you have to rearrange this dude's mind from it's okay to feel this way.
Yeah.
And it's like you shouldn't, it's not bad to feel that way intrinsically, right? But it is harmful to you to feel that way. You should try to get out of that.
Sure.
So to feel like to pat somebody in the back who goes, you know what, you've been through a lot. It's okay that you're feeling this way. Fuck that shit.
Yeah.
That is unacceptable. But that's how we treat people,
Mm-hmm.
and I think as much as anything, it's responsible for the suicide crisis.
So it's ridiculous. I didn't like being outside of the military, you hear the stories or whatever, but when you put it in the context of like this many people per day, it's like, well, clearly something's not working. Like the current, the way that we're doing it is not serving people.